Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name's Daniel Gormally. I'm a Grandmaster, currently living in Alnwick in Northumberland, which is in England. Northumberland's in England, funny enough. And today is November. But in December, there's going to be the return of London Chess Classic, which is a welcome news in English chess. So I wanted to talk about that. The field for the London Chess Classic is a stellar field. Now, back in the day when I was growing up, when I was a young man, you know, I got into chess and, you know, I'd read about all these tournaments like Lloyds Bank. Lloyds Bank was one of the stellar tournaments. I never played Lloyds Bank. The only connection I remember with Lloyds Bank was I went to these PCL Intel Grand Prix when I was a kid, and I'd watch some of these matches. I remember Morozevich playing Korchnoi in like the mid or early 1990s, and he lost to Korchnoi in a rapid play match, which really impressed me because I was reading about how Morozevich scored like 9.5 out of 10 in a Lloyds Bank. I believe it was 994, but I could be incorrect. And nobody had heard of Morozevich before then. He very quickly became a super GM. So Lloyds Bank was a stellar tournament, but I came into chess quite late, and I didn't really participate in the Lloyds Bank tournament. However, I have played in London Chess Classic, but not in the main event. I played in the Open. I was actually a little bit annoyed a few times. I never got invited to it was a British Knockout Championships, I think. I failed to qualify one year. I lost out in Telford. I think I lost to Ravi Harir in something like round 8. In a close game where I was possibly doing well at one point. Messed it up. Lost that game, didn't qualify. And that was the end of that. But yeah, my experience of playing the London Chess Classic has generally been quite a positive one. So the games in the Open would normally start around about 4 o'clock. So there's a lot of waiting around. I'd often stay with a friend of mine in Richmond, and I'd go walking around Richmond Park, which is a very beautiful park. It's actually the largest park, I believe, in London, or largest public park in London. And you got deer in there, so you know you're quite cold. It's like December, but you got all these hours to kill. I prefer just to get on with the game, right? I'd rather just play at like 10 o'clock in the morning because I tend to get up quite early anyway. But you play the Open. I don't recall ever winning the Open, but I came fairly close. One of the players I played in the Open and managed to beat was a guy called Jules Mussard, who was in this tournament, but he's improved since then. But he was still quite a good player when I played him. He was over 2,600. Tournament I also played a Indian player who was a top seed, Arvind. And I drew with him in the final round, and I should have won. Then I went back to near Wimbledon, where I was staying in Southfields, staying with a family in Southfields, and I had a time meal. I remember feeling very depressed and gloomy that I failed to win that rather trivial endgame. And funny enough, the tournament was won by a guy called Praggnanandhaa. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Praggnanandhaa. He's supposed to be quite promising, i.e. future world champion. But he won the tournament, the little genius. His sister's quite a good player as well. Anyway, so let's have a look at the field. So you've got Dominar Jaru Gukesh, friend of Praggnanandhaa, who is potentially himself a future world champion. Brilliant young player. His rating has gone down a lot. I think he's plummeted to the low of 27. I think he's running at like 27.20 now. I can't imagine what it must be like to be as low as 27.20. It must be unbearable. But yeah, he's a brilliant player. I'd make him the favourite. Don't know about clear favourite because he's obviously out of form, but he'd probably be a clear favourite, but he's a little bit out of form. Then you got Nikita Vitigov, Vityugov, not sure how you pronounce the name, from Russia. Brilliant player from Russia. Very solid player. We've seen a very good technical player, very good endgame player. Third seed, you got Amin Tabataei from Iran. Very good player. Had an interesting game against Nakamura. And Nakamura explained, I believe that was in the Isle of Man recently. Good young player. Mickey Adams needs no introduction. Probably the best English player ever, right? However, he probably will struggle to win many games in this field, I would guess, because it's quite a strong field. And he does tend to have very solid style these days. He draws quite a lot of games. So my guess is Mickey will score like +1 or +2. But maybe won't win the tournament. Then you got Volokitin from Ukraine, who's been a very good player for a number of years. I think his dad was some kind of arm wrestling champion, because there's a famous picture of him arm wrestling each other. Volokitin arm wrestling his dad, and Magnus Carlsen, and a young Magnus Carlsen, Sergei Karyakin looking on. I believe that was photographed was from Biel in Switzerland. Then you got Hans Niemann, little known player from USA. Interesting player. Got a lot of bad press, really. I think unwarranted. And he's I think he's rebuilt his reputation to a large extent. And very interesting player, very good at bumping up the press. Bartel, who's a very good, nice guy actually from Poland. Mussard, who I mentioned before, very talented player from France. And then you got Luke McShane, who in my view is probably the most naturally gifted player who's ever come out of England. But obviously decided not to really pursue the chess in terms of, be like some of these other guys who are doing 6 to 8 hours a day studying chess to try and become really good. Although he is, as far as I'm aware, a full-time chess player in the sense he doesn't do anything else. I don't think he works. He did a good job in a bank and earned lots of money from it. Therefore, he's comfortable financially. I believe he lives in Cambridge. And then at the bottom, you've got Sheris Royal, who is probably the next kind of Luke McShane, Mickey Adams type of player, right? I think he could be England's next 2600 player. Maybe as high as 2700 player. If you think about all these guys like Mickey Adams, Luke McShane, we kind of throw them all into the same category, right? David Howe, Gawain Jones. As far as I'm aware, Nigel Short as well, as far as I'm aware, all these players have at some point gone over 2700. So that would be the acid test for Sheraz. Can he get over 2700? I think 2600, I don't want to put too much pressure on him, will be a formality eventually. The 2700 will be tough. Especially now, these days, we've seen that there's been a lot of rate deflation. FIDE are trying to reverse that. There's also a Pro Business Cup and a Christmas party. The only concern I have is that recently we heard about the ECF was getting a donation from the government. How much of that is going into stuff like the Christmas party? Although it could well be that that is sponsored by the Pro Business Cup. Now, the reason why the London Chess Classic is a smaller event and there's no spectators allowed is they don't have access to the Olympia Conference Centre, which they did in the past. I believe that they were turned into apartments or something. So you see this in London, that a lot of expensive buildings eventually turn into apartments, or they can make a lot more money out of turning them into residential areas. I remember when I played the London Chess Classic, there was a lot of fuss made about the Kensington cinema. There was a cinema in South Kensington, and how they wanted to turn it into a block of flats. And I believe they eventually succeeded, unfortunately. So people need somewhere to live, but the people who buy these places are generally not from that area. They don't grow up that area. The people from outside that can afford to live there. I can't afford to live in London. Not many people can these days. But yeah, so how much of the ECF money is going into this event? My concern is that money going to be squandered? Has that money even been transferred yet? It may not have been transferred. But as far as this tournament is concerned, yeah, they've got a smaller venue, unfortunately. So they're not actually encouraging spectators to turn up and view the event. Prize fund is pretty decent, £15,000. So if Gukesh takes that back to India, £15,000, that's quite a lot of money for effectively 10 days' work. He'll also get his expenses paid, and I imagine he'll probably get an appearance fee as well. I don't know what his appearance fee will be. So it's quite an expensive event to put on. My guess is it would cost something in the region of, I'm not sure about now, but the tournament that they had before with Magnus and Caruana and Kramnik and all these kind of people would have probably cost something, at least something in the region of £250,000 to put on. Would have been a lot of money, maybe £500,000 to run. Very expensive. You know, that's just the main event, right? You got to put up the players, you got to put up the players' coaches, you got to pay for their travel. And then you've got to pay people like Magnus a big appearance fee. And then you've also got to put money into the prize fund. So all that is a lot of money. So obviously that's not all coming from the money that was freed up from the government for the ECF. Maybe none of that money is. None of that money is going into this event. However, there's one thing I'd like to talk about, which is I do think that players like Daniel Fernandez should be given a chance. Daniel has played really well over the last year since Cambridge. Which was in February, so it's about 9 or 10 months ago. Played really good chess. He played all around the world. He was effectively ignored for selection for the England team. Well, that's fair enough because, you know, there were good replacements. Like Ravi was obviously a good contender. Amit Gartzi also had a chance of getting in that team. However, I do think that potentially could have been put in this tournament, and that would have been a good kind of reward. I hope he's not being ignored. You know, that is the worry. I mean, I got to 25.70 in a time when you probably had more inflation than deflation. Now getting to 25.40, in my opinion, that's probably worth 2,600 back in the day. However, we're now seeing that, you know, or we're seeing that if you get to 25.40, your life isn't necessarily improving. You know, there is a kind of elite in this country. I've talked about this before. There's Adams, Howe, McShane, Gawain Jones, and other people who they're getting in the England team. They're 2,600 plus. They're getting the nice appearance fees when they're playing for England. They're getting the nice tournaments. They're getting the invites, which is fair enough because they're the best players. However, if you're a little bit below that, then suddenly you can miss out completely. And what is the incentive to get from, say, 24.60 or 24.80, which Daniel was, to get to 25.40, and then your life is not improving in any way? I feel there should be some kind of reward for that. You know, because these players are good players as well. Or we should test them and put them in against the better players. You know, it'd be interesting to see how Daniel pairs up against these kind of 2,600 guys, 2,700 guys, right? Like Gukesh. I mean, he'd probably lose to Gukesh. You know, no disrespect to Daniel. He'd probably lose to him. But it'd be interesting to see how he'd get on. So there's a few players in that category. I think Amit's in that category as well. People like Harry Grieve. Brandon Clark has now got so frustrated with the whole chess thing and how little money there is in chess and how certain players get favoured over others that he's more or less decided to quit chess. So is there an elite in this country? Are we too much favouring the elite? I'd be interested to see your comments down below. I've always felt like a fish out of water. When we talk about the Pro Biz Cup, I've never been invited to anything like that. I think they're worried that I'll start, you know, attacking people or swearing or getting too drunk and all this kind of thing. I'm effectively, you know, from South London. I'm from South London. I've got no qualifications. I've got no academic qualifications. I'm considered to be a bit of a South London thug. So therefore, I'm kind of persona non grata at these kind of posh, you know, it's like these Simpson and Strands events. I kind of never really got the point of them. They always seemed a bit snooty to me. But on the other hand, you know, I like Malcolm as a person. I think he's a good guy. He's done a lot for English chess. So I'm in two minds about it, but I do feel like we've kind of seen a separation between the elite, the English players who are considered the elite, and lesser GMs who are effectively getting nothing. People like Fernandez. I'd like to see someone like Fernandez be seen to be rewarded. He probably will be further down the line. We're talking a few months. He probably will get invited to some nice tournaments, and all this will be forgotten about. He's still got a chance to get in the England team in the future. As I said before, people like him and Ami, they're still quite young. Harry, as well, I think would fit into that category. He's a very promising player. They've got a chance. But then you look at Sheras. Sheras is younger than they are. And potentially maybe more promising because he's so young. He's only about 15, I think. He's working on chess every day. You've also got people like Bodhana who are coming up the ranks. You've got that kid from Scotland, Freddie Gordon. I think there's another one. Is it Super something or other from Scotland? Very young, very promising Scottish player. There's a few of them. Balaji is an English player. McCarr. There's loads of good young players about. Basically, is what I'm trying to say. And so it's very competitive. So if you had that success over last year like Daniel has, there's a worry is that your form drops off. People then forget about you. And you weren't rewarded for that period where you were playing well. So I'd like to see Daniel get into one of these tournaments. That's effectively the point I was trying to make in this video. I do think the field is warranted. I would have put Sheras in as well. I think you've got to give the younger players a chance. We can sometimes overrate younger players. There is a danger that you overrate people's potential. I think Caruana alluded to this in a recent podcast. He was saying about how everybody's predicting these young guys, they'll just get better and better and better. Yi Wei, who was a Chinese player, when he first came on the scene, people were predicting he's going to be 28-50. It's going to be like him and Magnus. It didn't work out that way. He eventually got to a point where he just plateaued. He didn't improve anymore. So there is a danger you overrate potential. I remember reading a study about it because I was always been into the horse racing, and Nick Morden was talking about how we underestimate experience and overrate potential. And he talked about some study that some people did from someone like Harvard, and they were saying how if you've got two possible outcomes, let's say you've got somebody who's a grandmaster and somebody who isn't. Now, the possible outcomes for us looking at those two people, we will find the person who isn't a grandmaster more interesting because there's two possible outcomes. They'll either become a grandmaster or they won't. With somebody who's already a grandmaster, there's only one possible outcome. They'll remain a grandmaster, right? So therefore, it's more interesting to the human mind. It's more intriguing. That is why we overrate potential, because it's more intriguing. It's more interesting. We don't know how good that Sheras Royal will turn out to be. Will he turn out to be 2700? Will he stay at 2400? So there's always a danger you overestimate potential, but I do think that he's a very promising player. And if he's playing against these guys from a young age, then he will confirm that potential. There's no doubt in my mind. So anyway, yeah, that was the point. I would like to see an extra place freed up for someone like Daniel Fernandez, like a young English player who's going well, or a Gartsy, or a Harry Grieve in the London Chess Classic. But I understand the London Chess Classic now has limited amount of money. It's not like it was before. They've got a smaller venue. They've probably got a smaller budget compared to what they had. So yeah, this is the problems that we are seeing in today's climate.